The closet door was already bulging at me the first night. I dropped my bag and felt the room breathe wrong. It wasn't big. A bed, a window that stuck, a wall AC that rattled. The closet door didn't sit flat. It bowed out in the middle, like someone leaned from the inside. I pressed my hand against it. It was solid. The paint at the edges had hairline cracks. I told myself humidity, old wood, bad hinges. I'd just moved in a week earlier. I took the place because it was cheap and month to month, and I was tired of sleeping on my sister's couch after the breakup. I didn't want drama. I wanted a door that shut. I got a tape measure from my toolbox and put the hook on the floor, end to the door. 1 inch at the widest part. I said it out loud. 1 inch. I put it in my notes app. 1.00 in. Felt stupid, but it calmed me. That night I was in bed at 2 a.m., and I heard tapping. Not loud. A light, steady tick. I sat up. It stopped. I held my breath. It started again. Tick. Tick. Not the AC. I walked over. There was a thin line of light where the latch wasn't catching. I set my palm to the jamb and felt faint air on the back of my hand. It was cold and sour, like a basement after rain. I leaned in and whispered, "Okay." I didn't know who I was talking to. I wedged a chair under the knob. Classic movie move. It creaked when I pushed it hard. I didn't sleep much. I have this thing where I'll do the lazy version first and then promise myself I'll fix it right later. I woke up twice. The chair shifted once. I kicked it back in place and went to the bathroom and told my reflection to stop being an idiot. In the morning, I called the landlord. He's a guy named Mark who answers texts with thumbs up emojis. I said, "The closet door's warped." He said, "It's an old house. It moves in summer." "It's March," I said. "Still, I'll send someone." He didn't. That afternoon I saw a woman in the hall. Thin, 50-ish, gray ponytail, taking out recycling. I said hi. She said hi back. Her name was Dora, from 2B. I asked how long she'd lived there. She said 10 years. "Anything weird in 3A?" I asked, trying to joke. She looked at my door. "You have the closet." "What closet?" She did this small shrug. "Used to be a crawl space behind there. They blocked it off before I moved in." She started to walk away and then turned back. "There was a kid," she said, "years ago, before the remodel, missing." My mouth felt dry. "From here?" "From this building." She pointed down the hall with her chin. "Her mom lived where you do now. It was in the news for a while. They never found her." She looked at my door again. I always hated that door. I made coffee I didn't want. I went into the closet to look. It was small, like all closets. A rod, some paint drips. The inside paint looked fresher than the room paint. The back wall had a weird seam, a thin vertical line like two sheets met and weren't sanded right. I ran my knuckles along it and felt a dip. Cold. I got out. On the inside of the frame, up high, something was taped under the trim. I saw the corner of paper folded over. I picked at it with my nail until it came loose. It was a note. Just printer paper cut in half. Sharpie in a steady hand. "Don't open when it asks nicely." I read it 3 times. I put it in my pocket. I went to work. I didn't tell anyone. That night I measured again. 1.125 inches. I pressed my ear to the door. There was a little sound, like someone blowing across a bottle. Thin air moving. I had that taste in my mouth again. Sour and old. I moved the dresser in front of it. This ugly low one I got for free. I jammed it tight. Then the chair. Then I put my suitcase in front of the chair. My room looked stupid. I felt better. Around 2 a.m., I heard the tapping again. Not from the floor this time. It sounded like fingernails on the inside of the door. Fast, then slow, then nothing. My heart was going. I stared at the ceiling until the AC kicked on and covered it. In the morning, I measured 1.25 inches. I marked the wall with pencil at the bulge, little hash marks with the date. It felt like a science project. It made it all less magic. I texted Mark again. The door is getting worse. I sent a picture with the tape pressed against it. He sent a thumbs up again. Then, next week? I went back into the closet and looked at the back wall. The seam looked bigger. Or I was convincing myself of that. I touched it. Cold hit my fingertips. I jerked my hand back. It left a little powder on my skin, like dust that didn't smell right. I saw another piece of paper taped inside the high corner, tucked under a metal bracket. I got on a chair and stood on my toes and slid it out. A torn envelope this time. Same hand. If you have to sleep, put weight on it. It gets worse at 3. I held it and read it twice with the chair wobbling under me. When I got down, I put the envelope on the fridge. I stared at it while I ate peanut butter on crackers. I told myself to be practical. If it's going to pop open, I might as well be ready. I bought a cheap indoor camera online with same-day pickup. Little square thing. I set it on the dresser, pointed at the closet. I set it to record overnight. I turned off the light and sat in the chair and watched the little red dot blink. The tapping started around 1 a.m. The air moved again at 2:10. I watched the top of the door. The molding was fine. The latch was not catching. Every 20 minutes the knob would jiggle on its own like it lost tension, and then it would stop. At 3:12, the dresser creaked. I didn't know that time would matter then. I noticed it because I looked at the little timestamp on the camera screen, blue digits in the corner, and the number was pleasing. 3:12. The dresser creaked like something inside the closet leaned hard. The chair groaned. The door flexed, maybe another hair. I slid out of the chair and put my shoulder into the dresser. I pushed back, and the creak stopped. I stayed like that until 4, my cheek against the fake wood, my breath fogging the varnish. In the morning, I watched the footage. I made coffee and watched it on my laptop. It was boring for 2 hours. Me moving around. The timestamp rolling along. Then at 2:30, the door changed shape. It wasn't the camera shifting. The door itself bowed and eased, in and out, the paint stretching white at the curve. It did it slow. In. Hold. Out. Like a breath, if wood could breathe. If something behind it was pressing. I zoomed in, and I could see the grain lines of the wood strain like strings pulled tight. The latch plate shuddered. The screws twisted a little like they were turning in their holes. At 2:58, the top hinge clicked. I heard it in the audio as a little ping. At 3:12, the middle of the door went out another millimeter, and the chair slid half an inch across the floor. It left a gray line on the tile. My stomach dropped. I paused it and stared. I backed it up 3 times. Same thing. I called Mark again. I kept it short. The door is not normal. He said, our maintenance guy is out. Don't worry. If it opens, we'll put in a new one. I said, Could I talk to whoever lived here before? He said, "We can't give out tenant info." He sounded tired. Then he said, "Look, the closet backs to a crawl space. They sealed it when they put in central air years ago. It's probably drafts. I'll have someone caulk it." I said, "Sealed how?" "Drywall," he said. "2 layers. Foam. It's fine." I hung up and sat on the bed and looked at the door. I wasn't going to make it a week. That night, I put in a new latch. I bought one at the hardware place around the corner. The old screws were stripped. They came out like they were coming out of chalk. I set the new plate, extra long screws, the kind they say to use for security. I drilled new pilot holes. I was proud of myself. The door clicked shut. Solid. I felt better. At 2 a.m., the tapping started. At 2:40, the air moved. At 3 o'clock sharp, the latch started to bend. I heard it. I put my flashlight beam on it and watched the metal bow away from the jamb, slow as gum. The screws started to lean. A tiny noise like someone breathing through their teeth came through the crack. My skin crawled. I shoved the dresser harder. The latch held, but the plate was warped when I checked it in the morning. It had a little hump now, like something human had leaned on it and it remembered. I told myself to move out. I told myself to pack and go to a hotel and eat the deposit. The note on the fridge sat there, calm. Put weight on it. 3. I knocked on Dora's door. She opened it and saw my face and stepped aside. "You look like you saw a ghost," she said. "Did you know them?" I asked. "The family with the missing kid." She nodded. I knew the mom. We weren't friends, but we nodded. She worked nights. She sipped from a mug and winced. The girl was 9. Her name was Lily. She had a backpack with stars on it. Neon stars. I remember that. She'd run down the stairs and skip the last 3. Her mom would yell to stop. She always laughed. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I said, "Do you think they sealed the crawl space before or after?" She stared at me. After. She put the mug down. I think after. I went back to my place and sat on the floor and put my hand under the door. Cold air licked my knuckles. It had that sour note again, like something had died and then dried out. I felt stupid. Then I felt angry. I went to the closet and pushed the clothes to one side and pressed on the back wall where that seam was. It had a little give. Not much. Enough. I got a screwdriver and chipped at the paint over the joint. It flaked easy. Underneath was drywall tape. I didn't go further. My hands were shaking. That night, the first screw popped. I heard it ping across the floor at 2:16. It sounded like a paper clip flicked with a thumb. I sat up straight and turned on the lamp. I found the screw in the morning under the dresser. The top hinge was missing one now. The others were loose, tilted. I could press the heads with my finger and they would sink and come back out. The wood around them was going soft. I wrote the bulge on the wall again. 1.375 inches. I wrote the time of the screw pop next to it. 2:16 a.m. At lunch, I bought a door bar, one of those security poles that jam under the knob to the floor. I felt dumb in the store. I told the cashier my boyfriend sleepwalked. She smiled and said those help. I said it that night. Chair. Dresser. Bar. I sat on the floor with my back against the dresser and my feet braced. I didn't watch the camera. I looked at my phone and scrolled until my eyes hurt. At 2:52, the air turned colder by 10 degrees. I don't know if that's true. It felt true. My hands prickled. I smelled it again. Sour and old, like the inside of a box from the curb. I put my ear to the jamb and there was a tiny whisper that sounded like letters rubbed together. I heard scratching. Soft at first. Then faster. Fingernails on paint. The kind of sound I can't do now without wanting to gag. The scratches ran under the paint, like the paint was inside and they were inside the paint. That's how it sounded. Dumb, I know. I watched a thin line appear on the inside edge where I could see past the latch. Tiny white curls of paint lifted. Letters pressed from the other side. P-E. Then a space where it slipped and started over. P-L-E. The E looked wrong, like someone didn't know how many lines it needed. I heard my voice come out raw. No. I said it like I said it to my little niece when she lied about stealing a cookie. I put my palm on the door and pressed. The scratches stopped. The breathing didn't. It kept going, slow. In, out. At 3:12, the board I hadn't put up yet split, except there wasn't a board yet, so something else had to split. The door bar jerked and slid an inch. It scraped a groove in the vinyl. The chair hopped. The dresser moved. Everything pressed toward me, and for a second I imagined I was holding someone's chest shut while they tried to inhale. It freaked me out so much I laughed. It wasn't funny. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't text. I didn't work the next day. I took a sick day and sat in my car in front of the hardware store until it opened. I bought a real board. Pine, a little warped already. I had them cut it to the width of the room plus a hair. I bought a mallet. I set it waist high across the doorframe, one end against the wall, the other past the dresser into the plaster. I banged it in until it bit. The paint cracked on my wall. I didn't care. I tested it. It held. I set the bar under the knob under the board. Redundant. Baines. That made me feel smarter than scared. I was getting ready to actually move out at this point. I started a box. I put books in. I packed a bag. But I didn't go. I couldn't leave it with nobody in the room. I know how that sounds. I kept seeing the note in my head and the tape marks on the wall and that timestamp. 3:12. If I left and came back and the door was open and the room was empty, I'd never know what happened. I wouldn't sleep anywhere again. I went online and searched the address. The old listing photos showed a bright room with a yellow rug and a woman in a robe in the kitchen, half turned to smile. In the comments, someone typed, "Is this where Lily disappeared?" No one had replied. I clicked until my eyes blurred. I found a forum thread. A username I didn't recognize had posted 3 years ago. 3 a closet. Anyone else having issues? The replies were jokes. One said, "Don't open when it asks nicely." My stomach dropped. The handle matched the handwriting. I screenshotted the username and messaged it. Felt stupid. I said, "Are you the previous tenant of 3A?" He replied an hour later. "Who's this?" I said, "I'm in 3A now. The closet." He took a while. "You found my notes." "Yeah." "Hold pressure," he wrote. "It's worse when there's no weight." "What is it?" I typed. He didn't answer for 20 minutes. Then, "I don't know." It stopped when I kept pressure. It woke me up around 3. It moved things. I moved out when the screws started breaking. When it asks, "What does that mean?" I asked. "You know what it means," he wrote. "It says please. It scratches it. It breathes. Don't open when it asks nicely." I didn't write back for a while. I sat on the bed and thought about that tiny word forming under paint. P-L-E. E. I went over to the doorway and touched the board. Strong. A day later, the first thing slid out of the gap. I heard it in the afternoon while I was home, waiting for Mark's guy who never came. It made a soft shh on the floor. I looked down and there was a shoelace. Gray, stiff with old dirt. One plastic tip missing. I picked it up and rubbed it between my fingers. It left a smear. I set it on the dresser and washed my hands too hard. That night, the breather behind the door was calm until 2. Then it started tapping, right where my head touched the board. I put both hands up and braced. It felt like leaning against a slow heartbeat. At 1:58, a tiny charm slid out and landed by my foot. I knew it wasn't mine before I picked it up. It was a little star with chipped glitter in pink and blue. The metal loop was bent, the kind of thing a kid would hook to a backpack. I set it beside the shoelace. I felt like I was stealing. I knocked on Dora's door with the star in my hand and held it up. She blinked hard and sat down on her stairs without thinking. "She had stars," she said. She pressed her fingers to her mouth. "I don't know if that's hers," she said into her hand. "I don't know." Her eyes were wet and she was trying not to blink so it wouldn't fall. I didn't touch her. We sat like that side by side. I called the police the next morning. I told them I thought there was something behind my closet. I didn't say it breathed. I said, there might be evidence of an old case. The dispatcher sounded bored until I said the name. Then she put me on hold. A detective called me back and said he'd come by on Friday. It was Tuesday. Tuesday night, the middle hinge pulled out of the doorframe with a pop that made me scream. The top screw went first. It shot across the room and smacked the window. Then the bottom one tore out and the hinge swung. The door bent farther. The board I set creaked like a tree in wind. The camera caught me scrambling in underwear, grabbing another chair, shoving it under the board. I watched the footage later and thought I looked like an animal. It was 3:12 when the board cracked. Not all the way. A jag opened along the grain. I smacked it back with the mallet and jammed a piece of wood shim in the split. I was sweating. My legs shook. I kept thinking about the word please and wanted to throw up. Wednesday, I bought 2 more boards. I cross-braced them like a makeshift X. I borrowed a floor jack from a guy at work and put it under the bottom board and raised it until the plaster sang a little. My brain did this thing where it made rules. Check the screws at midnight. Make coffee at 1. Sit in the chair at 2. Put hands on at 3. Breathe steady. Don't listen to words. A thin new scratch showed up by the latch. The letters changed. The first part looked like an H. There was a line, and then another line. Then it got messy where my board blocked the movement. It wasn't pretty like chalk. It looked like someone rubbing a rock until it made a mark. Thursday morning, I measured the bulge again. 1.5 inches. The wall had pencil marks all over now. It looked like I was measuring a kid's height. Little lines with dates and times. 1.125, 1.25, 1.375, 216, 312. It was dumb, but I couldn't stop. That afternoon, I heard Dora crying through the wall. I knocked. She let me in with red eyes. She had an old flyer spread on her coffee table. Lily's 5th grade picture. A gap in her teeth, bangs cut uneven. A backpack strap across one shoulder with stars on it. I didn't say anything. She set her hand on the flyer like it was warm. Her mother moved away last year, she said. She couldn't walk past your door anymore. She looked up and back at me. If there's anything, if you find... I'll call, I said. I'll call you first. That was a dumb promise. I made it anyway. The detective between calls kept canceling. Friday became Monday. The landlord said his guy could come Saturday to look at the caulking. I wanted to laugh into the phone until he hung up. Friday night, I texted a friend, Luis, who lives 2 blocks down. He's the kind of neighbor who keeps a toolkit in his hall and feeds every stray cat. I said, "Can you come help me with a door?" He said, "Sure." He brought gloves and a headlamp. He's young, but his eyes are older. I showed him the bulge and the braces and the camera footage. He didn't laugh. He put his hand on the wood and winced. "Cold," he said. We sat on the floor with our backs to the dresser. At 2:30, he stopped joking. He whispered, "Do you hear that?" The breath through the crack, the little dry rattle. He blinked and stared at the tiny white curl of paint that rolled out under the edge and fell like dandruff. He said, very soft, "Please don't be a person." We planned to only ease it, not open, just pressure off enough to see what was stuck. Backpack maybe, a blanket, something to give a family a call they needed. The notes line kept looping in my head. Don't open when it asks nicely. We said it to each other like a rule. If we hear anything with words, we stop. We waited until noon the next day. Sun in the window. No traffic in the hall. We texted Dora, told her we might find something. She knocked and came in and sat on the end of the bed like it was mine to give permission. She shook. I handed her water and she didn't drink it. Luis took the mallet. I took the drill. We unscrewed the top hinge and replaced 2 screws with long bolts into a block behind. We tightened the board snug but not crushing. We had the floor jack under the bottom board so we could release slowly. We were careful. It felt stupid to be careful again and again, but we kept repeating it. Careful. I took the latch plate off. I unscrewed it and slid it aside, left the latch tongue loose. The door pressed immediately into the gap like breath into a sling. The smell hit all at once like someone opened a fridge that went bad. Dora gagged into her sleeve. I swallowed and kept my hand on the wood. The grain felt like skin. On 3, Luis said, "Ease it." We lowered the jack a quarter turn. The board groaned. The door flexed to whisper more. Luis pried the edge with a flat bar just enough to make a dark slit. I put my fingers in and felt canvas. Cold. I pinched it and pulled. A strap appeared. It was pale blue with worn edges. Little white stars. Dora made a sound like air leaving a balloon. Luis said, "Okay, okay, got it." We pulled slowly. The backpack was wedged under the door, the fabric stiff, the zipper corroded green. It had a pink plastic zipper pull, a star like the charm on my dresser. It came free with a wet sound. The dark behind it breathed once, harder. I shoved the board back a hair. The door pressed. The seam didn't open more. We kept pressure. The room smelled like a shed that flooded last year. We didn't open the backpack. We set it on a towel. Dora didn't touch it. She just looked at it like she could see her entire life bend. There was more in the gap. Fabric. A sleeve. A shred of something with cartoon hearts. Something clattered, light as a spoon. A tooth? No. A button. I slid my fingers in again because I hated myself and because we were already here. My hands shook. I felt something round and hard and fine. A small bone. Phalanges. I didn't have words for it at the time. It rolled into my palm like a bead. I turned and put it in a bowl without seeing what else one could find. Then I put the bowl in a box and taped the box shut with my whole arm shaking. Dora made a sound that had words inside it, but I didn't hear them. She covered her mouth again and rocked. Luis sat back and wiped his face with his sleeve. "Okay," he said. "We need to stop." "Call," I said to him, pointing at my phone. He called. He told the dispatcher we found remains. He gave the address. He said we were keeping the door shut. He didn't say it breathed. He hung up and put the phone on the dresser and rubbed his hands on his jeans. We tightened everything again. We cranked the jack, set the boards, reset the bar under the knob. We pushed. The door pushed back. Not like before. Harder. Angry. The breathing door flex grew a notch. The screws in the top hinge squealed. They were new. They still moved. "Why is it worse?" Luis whispered. "It's mad," I said. I don't know why I said that. It felt true. The air coming through the jamb went colder, and then hot in a pulse, and then cold again. I got dizzy. The flashlight beam swung and made the split in the board look like a mouth. We stayed like that for an hour. The cops came slower than I wanted and faster than made sense. 2 uniforms and then a man in plain clothes with a beard and a notebook. He said his name and I lost it. He looked at the door and then at us bracing it, and his eyes got a weird respect in them, like he understood we were doing something important he didn't have a form for. He asked if there was a way around the back, like a crawlspace access. I shook my head. "It's sealed," I said. The coroner came with a bag and soft voice. They took the bowl without opening it, and the backpack too. Dora asked if she could see the backpack one more time, and they let her. She didn't touch. She looked and closed her eyes and wiped her face with both hands and made a sound I haven't forgotten. The detective said they would open the wall as soon as they got a warrant. "Today," he said, "we'll come back." "Maybe not today," I said, and then felt stupid because he had a badge and I was just some person. But I held the board with my shoulder, and the thing behind the door leaned harder, and he saw me strain and he nodded like, "Okay, later then." "Can you hold it?" he asked. "I can hold it," I said. "Don't open it at night." He wrote things in his notebook. He looked at the pencil marks on the wall. He took pictures. He didn't write down 312. I told him anyway. He smiled and said okay. When they left, it was just me and Luis and Dora again. The room was hot and then cold. We took turns leaning on the board. Luis cracked jokes and then ran out of jokes. Dora went home and came back with a blanket and put it on my bed in a way that made me want to cry. The day longer than it had any right to be. When it got to 3, the door's pushing changed. It went from slow to needy. It took everything. The bottom board creaked in a way I hadn't heard. The jack sank a hair. The top hinge groaned. The knob turned a little and then stopped. The paint along the crack squeezed out and stuck like gum. The smell got worse. Under it was another smell that I don't have a word for. Like heat, but not temperature. Like hunger, but not mine. Luis said, "What if?" and then didn't. He set his jaw and leaned harder. My shoulder burned. The wood bit my arm through my shirt. The thing behind it flexed again, and the boards made that long, tired sound. I felt tears on my face and didn't know if I was crying from fear or because the little bones were in a bag down the hall and Dora needed something I couldn't give. Sometime around 4, it eased. The breath went shallow. The knocks turned to little dry taps like a kid's teeth chattering. I knew that didn't make sense. I didn't argue with myself. When the light outside got gray, Luis stood up and shook his arms and said, "I can come back tonight." He looked at my wall. "Build it better," he said. "Make it so it can't move." I looked at the door and at my dumb pencil lines, all those little marks trying to tame something that didn't care. I realized two things at once, and I hated both. One was relief. We found something. Even if it wasn't all, it was enough to stop the not knowing. The backpack. The little bones. Dora held a flyer and I saw her hand steady a little. I saw her look at me like I'd done something decent without knowing how. The other thing hit harder. It landed like a rock in my stomach and stayed. The child hadn't been pressing to get out. She had been pressing back. She had found the door and put her small body against it and held it while something else pushed. She had been strong until she couldn't be. I felt like my arms were the wrong size. I felt small in my own apartment. I looked at the board and the jack and the bent latch, and I knew I was going to keep it shut. If that was all I had, that would be enough. We got longer boards. I hammered extra blocks into the wall so the ends had something harder to bite. I put a second jack under the top board to stop the bow. We screwed a metal strap across the hinges. I put the dresser back and a heavy table sideways and a line of books. Not because they would stop anything, but because weight helped and because I wanted Lily to see I was trying. Luis wrote on a piece of cardboard with a Sharpie and taped it to the door frame where a future me might miss it. He wrote times. Midnight. 2. 3. Check. Hold. He drew arrows to the jack handles. He drew an X over the latch. He was careful and neat, and his hands didn't shake like mine. I taped the first note back too, right above. Don't open when it asks nicely. I wrote my own page. Clear, big letters. Rules. Keep the boards tight. Add weight at 255. It pushes hardest at 312. If you have to sleep, sleep in shifts. If you leave, tell someone. Don't touch the latch when it spells. Don't read the words out loud. If the smell changes, get help. Holding pressure is the only thing that worked. I copied the list and slid one under Dora's door with a note. If anything happens, knock. I'll stay. I stayed. I'm staying now. I'm saying this with the boards in place and the jack handles under my palms and that little star charm on my dresser catching light. It's late. The camera's red dot is on. The breath behind the door has evened out some. The room smells like pine and old air. My arms hurt. My heart doesn't. I'm not a hero. I got stuck here. But I can be heavy. I can be stubborn. I can push back. Hero. If someone else ends up in 3A after me, they'll find the pencil lines and the notes taped under the trim and the boards with the marks at the good spots. They'll find my number. Call me if you need a second pair of hands at 3 in the morning. Come over. We'll hold it. Dora came by at dusk and sat on the floor across from me. She didn't ask questions I couldn't answer. She put her hand against the board for a minute, like you might touch a grave you built yourself. Thank you, she said. Her voice was quieter than the room. Just, thank you. I nodded. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make it into something neat and pretty. It isn't. It's 3:11 now. The board is creaking a little. I'm going to lean in. You know what to do if I don't answer your text. Come up the stairs. The door's open. You'll hear it. Put your hands on the wood. Don't listen when it asks nicely. Hold. I hope you enjoyed that one. Sometimes these stories stay with you longer than you expect. If you'd like to hear more, subscribe for the next night's story. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe watch another before the lights go out. See you in the next one.